Hello guys, and welcome to my first video in this new series. I'm just gonna call it book talk because I don't know how often I'm gonna do it. I was gonna wait till the end of the month today that I'm filming this because I don't know when this is gonna go up. It's October 19th, but I am lending 2 of these books to my friend Andrea, and I'm bringing them to her today, so I wanted to have them for the video, so we're just filming it now. So I think pretty much in the last month we have this stack of books we're falling that I have read, and then I have a stack over here of books that I have that I'm planning to read. They're what's up next. I'll show those briefly at the end, but how this is going to be structured is here in the beginning of the video. I'm gonna pull up my Goodreads app. Feel free to add me on there. It's just like my name. I don't know if that'll focus. That's me. So feel free to add me because I would love to see what you guys are up to. So I'm gonna pull this up so I can just tell you my basic 1 out of 5 star rating. I'm gonna speed through these, let you know 1 out of 5 what it is. And then I will have timestamped down below when I talk about each book. I will be talking in depth. There will be spoilers. So say you haven't read this book yet, but you have read this book, you can skip forward to this one just to see that, and then you can revisit the video when you want to hear my thoughts on the other book. I feel like that's the best way to do it. I thought about doing it spoiler free, but I just feel like I can't express how I'm feeling enough. So just gonna give you my quick rundown, and then like I said, I will have it timestamped down below when I talk about each individual book in detail so that you can be spoiled if you don't care about spoilers, which is me. I literally don't care about spoilers, or you can fast forward to the books you've already read or books you don't really care about. So Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This one I rated a 5 out of 5, as well as When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I'm gonna go in order of I'm gonna show you which ones I liked the best first and then the worst, because there's some bad ones. The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I rated this one a 4 out of 5. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janette McCurdy is also a 4 out of 5. Verity by Colleen Hoover. I rated it a 3 out of 5. As well as Wild at Heart by K.A. Tucker was also a 3. I rated both Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover and The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Is it Sager or Sager? I don't really know. A 2 out of 5. And then finally, The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I rated a 1. So we are now gonna, that is the basic how I felt about it. You can tell I liked it, loved it. The way I feel is a 1 is I did not like, would not recommend, terrible. A 2 is didn't enjoy it, but I don't want to burn it. 3, it's average, it was fine. 4 is I really enjoyed it, would recommend. And then 5 out of 5 is couldn't put it down, amazing. So we're gonna go in these reverse order now because that's how they're stacked up from my least favorite to my favorites. So if you don't want to be spoiled, this is when you should check those timestamps. So we have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This book, it had promise in what it's about. So basically this book is about an apothecary in the late 1700s, and she makes poison to kill what is the word? Against oppressive men in women's life. So women will come by, drop a card to her about who they're trying to kill and when, and then she will make a poison to kill them. And so she's killing cheating men, men who are abusive to the women or abusive to children, so on and so forth. I'm hell yeah, that's kick ass. That's so cool. And so that's part of it. This story is told from 3 different points of view. There's Nella the apothecary, Eliza, who's kind of her apprentice, I guess we'll call her, and then Caroline, who Her storyline is set like 200 years later, like in modern time. Caroline's storyline was actually really good, and I really enjoyed Caroline's storyline, but I hated the other ones so much that this book was like unbearable almost. Caroline's storyline is that she finds out that her husband was cheating on her, and they were supposed to go on a 10-year anniversary trip to London, but she's like, I'm going without you, like F you, obviously, you suck. So she still continues on and goes to London without him, and then she goes mudlarking, I don't even know what that is, but she finds this little vial with a bear engraved on it, and she's like trying to figure out where that is from, and it basically is a vial from Nella and Eliza, and it goes through like that story, and it's just like so boring. The like old-timey part's just not for me. Like, I was reading through some of the Goodreads reviews, and it was pretty much the same, where it's like it was really good in theory but kind of a mess in practice sort of thing, where it was just like boring, not good, had promise and then failed. So do not recommend. However, I'm very much a judge a book by the cover type of person, which I will get into more so with my to be read section, but this was just not good. I don't recommend. So I do have a book club. It's me and my sister made a book club with some of our friends, and each month somebody new picks the book. So this was our September book club. It was actually chosen by Kirsten. She does book videos as well on occasion, and I absolutely hated this book so much. I rated it a 2 for a plethora of reasons. It was not entertaining, but like there were a lot of twists and turns that you didn't expect, so it wasn't as bad as The Lost Apothecary, where it was just boring. This is just like not my cup of tea. So it is about Casey, who is a widowed actress. She's on Broadway, and her husband drowned in the lake at like her family's house in Vermont, and after he dies, she kind of goes on a bender, is not doing well, which, to be fair. And her family basically sends her to the lake house, which right there, if that's where her husband died, why would you send her there to heal? That just seems like more trauma. As somebody who has like had great loss in their life, I can't even really drive past my mom's house without like all of the feelings coming back. So right there, that was silly. But there's a house across the lake, obviously, what it's called, and the house across the lake is like just glass windows, big beautiful mansion, and this like model Catherine and her husband Tom move into the house, whatever. Casey's a drunk. She's literally constantly wasted. You read plenty of times about all of the like hard liquor she's drinking, and she's like has binoculars and is like a little creepo spying on this family or this husband and wife, and she like sees somebody in the lake face down, like drowning. So she goes out on the lake, saves her. It's Catherine. At this point, the book's seeming promising, nothing like that wild. So they start kind of becoming friends, so on and so forth, until one day she just kind of goes missing. The night before she goes missing, though, Casey is spying on them, of course, because she's always spying on them. And the husband, Tom, and Catherine get into this big fight, and then all of a sudden Catherine's missing. And it's this adventure on trying to figure out what happened to her. She enlists the help of one of her neighbors. I already forgot his name. Boone. She kind of becomes friends with this guy Boone. They're kind of like romantic and so on and so forth. But then she thinks that he's the one who kidnapped her. I don't know, it was really weird. Come to find out, she finds Catherine in the basement of this other house, and then all of a sudden, out of absolutely nowhere, Catherine's possessed by her ex-husband who died in the lake. And at this point, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why are we all of a sudden being possessed? That makes absolutely no sense. So I didn't really like that. And like within all of this, like prior to her finding Catherine, Boone and her enlist the help of like a detective, and they're trying to pin the murders of these 3 other girls on Tom and figure it out. And then later you find out that Casey killed her husband. She didn't like technically kill him, but she found out he was the murderer. You find out that she essentially kind of like didn't kill her husband, but like let him die. She drugged him and took him out to the lake and pushed him overboard and didn't save him, let him drown, because she found out he had killed these other girls. So the fact that when the detective is talking to her about this, you don't get like her inner monologue of like, if this is what it'll take for her to look into time, then sure, but I know he's not the one who killed those girls. Or if the twist was like Catherine and Tom were like a murdering duo, like that would have been interesting, but the possession was just so corny. And then she like kissed Catherine so that her dead husband's spirit would go into her body, and then she drowned herself to like kill the spirit out of her. I don't know, man. It was bizarre, it was weird, it was not good, and I would not recommend. So this is where the video gets, you guys are gonna all cancel me. I've read 2 Colleen Hoover books, didn't really like either of them, and I just don't think I like her. Nothing wrong with if you do like her, that is fine, but I just don't. So this was my first introduction. This was our October book of the month, picked by my sister's friend Elena, and it was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. So this girl Tate, she moves in with her brother, and the day she's going to go move in, there's like this guy passed out drunk in front of the door. She calls her brother and he's like, oh, does he look like, and he's like, oh, that's my friend, just bring him inside, whatever. So she does that. That guy, his name is Miles, and Tate and Miles have like a lot of attraction to each other. They're very lustful, and so they decide to basically become friends with benefits. And Miles asks her for 2 things. Never ask about my past and don't expect a future. And then I would say this whole middle section of the book is just porn, period, whatsoever. It's just a smut book, the whole middle, which is fine if that's what you're looking for, but that's just like really not what I'm into. So I did not enjoy that. And then like, there is no relationship building. Like they literally hook up whenever Miles is a pilot, and so he's gone for like chunks of time. Whenever he's home, they hook up, and then when he's not home, they don't even talk to each other. They don't text, they don't have phone calls. They literally have absolutely no relationship. And then Tate falls in love with him. And I'm just sitting here like, how'd you fall in love with him, girl? You know nothing about him. You know nothing about his family. You literally know absolutely nothing. The only reason this got a 2 and not a 1 is because there's a side storyline. And I do like that also in between chapters you flip-flop from point of view. I find that very interesting. There's this other storyline about Miles back when he was in high school, and he fell in love with his high school sweetheart Rachel, and then come to find out his dad was dating Rachel's mom, and then their parents got married, so they were technically step-siblings, but they were still like doing the nasty. Then he gets her pregnant, and again, this feels very porn. And he like keeps telling Tate that like he doesn't have like the ability to love anymore. We won't tell her what happened because she cannot ask about his past. That's one of the rules. And you basically eventually find out that Rachel had the baby, everything was going good, and on their drive home from the hospital they got into a car accident and the baby unfortunately died, which was actually really sad. Brought like little chills to my body, and like that storyline was very interesting and very good. And then he ends up like giving in to loving Tate, and they live happily ever after. But it was just like, I don't understand how the relationship built. Like I don't know what she fell in love with, because there was quite literally nothing to fall in love with, nothing about it. So there was that. We will move into my other Colleen Hoover book, which was Verity. This book is my sister's favorite book of all time, and I did like it significantly better than Ugly Love. And also this cover, absolutely hideous, makes the book even worse. This cover looks nice, so that's already like a step in the right direction. This book was quite good until the end. That's why it's getting a 3. It's like, I enjoyed it, but I thought the ending was really corny. It's about this girl Lowen, and she is a writer, and she gets hired to finish writing this author Verity Crawford's books, because Verity was in a car accident and is basically like, not like she like is in a wheelchair, she can't talk. They say that her mental capacity is that of a toddler, and so she just can't write anymore, but she was in contract to write these books, blah, 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 blah. So the husband, Jeremy, hires Lowen, and Lowen goes to their house and stays with them while she goes through Verity's office, because Jeremy's like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I think it would be best if you just look through this, everything. And with doing that, Lowen finds a manuscript of an autobiography Verity was writing. They had 3 children. They had twin girls and then a boy. Both twins died within 6 months of each other, and then Verity got into the car accident. In this manuscript, the beginning of it is very, again, smutty, and that's the vibe, talking about her relationship with Jeremy and how it was very lustful. And then the night that he proposed to her, she got pregnant with the twins, and that she didn't love them, she didn't want to have them. It talks about her, like, doing some things to try to end the pregnancy. Very descriptive, very, not a pleasant thing to read about. And so on and so forth. It goes into, like, her eventually liking the one baby and not liking the other one, and then blaming the other one for its death, and how she killed one of them, and that she purposely that she was gonna, like, off herself by, like, driving into this tree. Just all of this stuff. And then while Lowen is living in the house, she's, like, getting this vibe from Verity that, like, she's staring at her and this, that, and the other thing. And so she starts thinking that she's faking it. And then the son, who is still alive, like, will say things to her that, like, make her feel like Verity is talking to him, even though she apparently cannot talk. For example, she was like, she had asked him something, like, about his mom, and he said, Mom said, like, if you ask about her, not to say anything. And she's like, oh, is she talking to you? Like, so she basically sets up a baby monitor in Verity's room and catches her crawling, and it basically blows up the whole thing. And the husband, Jeremy, finds out that she's the reason the twins are no longer there, and so he takes it upon himself to end her. And then Lowen, like, up to this point, I'm thinking, wow, this is, like, a pretty good book. Ugly Love was just a fluke. Until eventually Lowen and Jeremy get together, they fall in love, whatever, cute, don't mind that, that's fine. The boy says that he needs to get his pictures he drew for his mom, they're under the floorboard. And so Lowen goes and she finds this letter that Verity wrote, that it was all a lie, and that if you found the manuscript, like, that wasn't true. It was, like, her version of, like, method acting, kind of, but, like, method writing. And her books were all written in the villain point of view, so she needed to, like, get into character to write it. And that ruined the book for me. Like, that brought it down from a 4 to a 3, made me not like it, made me think it was stupid. And I stand by that. Like, I just really wasn't vibing with that. No. I guess if I'm, like, apparently it's, like, a topic of conversation of, do you believe the manuscript or do you believe the letter? I believe the manuscript. The letter, I guess, was just her way of trying to cover up for it. But that's my thoughts on Verity. Okay, I do have one more 3, which is Wild at Heart. However, it is the sequel to The Simple Wild. So I'm going to talk about The Simple Wild first, even though I liked it better, just so that the story makes sense. So we have The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This I rated a 4 out of 5. I really, really liked this book. So it's about this girl, Calla, and the first chapter is kind of like her mom talking, and her mom married this pilot in Alaska, and they had their daughter, but she just couldn't withstand living in Alaska. They lived in a very rural town, and she just couldn't do it. So she took Calla and moved back to Toronto, and essentially never looked back. The dad's name was Ren, and he had, like, a over the phone relationship with Calla up until, like, her early teens, and then when he didn't show up for her middle school graduation, she stopped talking to them, and they didn't talk for, like, 12 or 14 years or something along those lines. Then Calla loses her job, and her life kind of feels like it's falling apart. And she lives with her mom and her stepfather, Simon, who was, like, the cutest, like, therapist dude. He's so nice. Love him. And he gets a phone, like, she is going out with her friend, and her stepdad walks out and is like, hey, Calla, like, the phone's for you. And she's like, who is it? And he's like, it's Alaska. And she's like, okay. So she answers it, and it's a woman on the other end, basically saying, like, is this Calla? Your dad is sick. He has cancer. If you want, like, I think you should come. Like, if you want a chance to know him before, like, it's too late, you need to come now. So she agrees to go to Alaska for a couple of weeks. She gets there, and this guy Jonah picks her up because he, like, he's flying in, like, her dad owns, like, the company, and Jonah works for him. It's, like, an airplane company, I guess. And he flies her in, and he brings, like, a rinky-dinky airplane. She almost barfs. She's dressed very, like, high heels. Like, she's going somewhere glamorous when she's going to, like, rural Alaska. Her luggage won't fit on the plane. That's how small it is. And they're like, oh, we'll send it in. And it's basically this journey of Calla trying to build a relationship with her dad. And so you go through that when Jonah's kind of like this asshole who just refers to her as Barbie because she's like prissy, I guess, in comparison to like what they're used to. And you go through this journey and you see like her dad is like really good friends with this neighbor lady, Mabel. No, her daughter's name is Mabel. Why can't I'm like so bad at remembering these names today for some reason. Agnes. He's really good friends with the neighbor Agnes, and she has a daughter, Mabel, and Calla has to kind of sit back and watch her dad have kind of like a father-daughter relationship with this other girl, which is painful for her, and it like hurts her feelings. And yeah, so it's basically them just like building their relationship. And then she finds out that her dad's cancer is a lot worse than he kind of let on, and that he was refusing treatment. His dad had also had the same, it was lung cancer, also had lung cancer, and he watched his dad suffer and didn't want to like go through that. They said that treatment would get him a couple more months maybe. So basically he was essentially going to die in a couple of weeks, was selling his company, doing all this stuff. And like there was this one part where he like really wasn't supposed to drive without like fly, I guess, without somebody with him. But he wanted to take Calla up by himself. Him, Jonah, and Calla had been going up here and there. But he wanted to take Calla up one time, like on his own. And while they were up there, he was like, I just want you to know, like, this is going to be my last fly. I want it to be something like that just you and I did together. And it like makes me want to cry thinking about it, especially as somebody who's lost a parent. It was just like really in the feels. There is like an underlying love story between Calla and Jonah, but I just hate Jonah. Like, I think he's a piece of shit asshole. I started reading this book because I watched Sarah Ray Vargas, so I watched her like vlog channel, and she talked about this book, and she talked about hating Jonah, and I completely agree. He like stole her makeup so she couldn't wear any makeup. He stole her clothes for like days. That's why they just like hadn't shown up in Alaska. He literally took them and hid them. Like, if she wants to wear makeup, let her girl wear makeup if that's what she likes. Like, I just, not a fan. He is like literally such an asshole. But they kind of like fall in love. And then Calla's mom was kind of always still in love with Ren. Just like one of those, like, it just wasn't gonna work type of things. Very like star-crossed lovers. So like when things started really taking a turn with Ren, Calla calls her mom and is like, you should come. And there's just like one part where like her mom walks into the house, the same house that she lived in when she lived in Alaska, and walked into Ren's room where he was basically like on hospice, and they just both started crying. It was just like really emo. And then it ends and Calla goes back to Toronto. Jonah stays in Alaska. A couple of weeks pass by and Jonah shows up on her doorstep and is like, I want to make it work. Like, I'll move out of Bangor and we can move somewhere closer to, what's the big city in Alaska? Why can't I think of Anchorage? We can move closer to Anchorage so it'll work out for both of us, blah, 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 blah. So this was really good. Highly recommend. It might make you cry. It made me cry. It made my sister cry. It was a whole thing. And then this book is the sequel, and it is about Calla and Jonah's life in Alaska, or her moving to Alaska. This I rated a 3 because it just like wasn't as good, because it was very Jonah heavy and I just don't like him. So she moves there and he basically cons her into like still living hours away from Anchorage. It's closer, but it's still hours away, in like a log cabin in a really small town and whatever. So it's like a whole thing. He's trying to make her be like friendly with the townsfolk and whatever. He tries to like he like almost proposes to her when they've been together for like 6 months. It's just like a whole situation. But there's this neighbor Roy who's like this crotchety old guy and like really mean, doesn't like have any friends, nobody talks to him, he's just like an asshole. And Kayla kind of like befriends him. He ends up getting, he has like these wolves as pets basically, and one of them is like on her doorstep like barking and barking, and she follows him out and they go into like a shed, and Roy had fallen, broken a bunch of bones, and so Kayla like goes over to his house to help him with his chores, and he's like really doesn't want her there. She starts bringing him dinner and learning more about him, and then like they befriend each other, and it's like a very cute relationship, and like it like really warmed my heart. I really enjoyed that. But like Jonah again was just such an asshole, and he's like, oh, you'll get used to it. She's like, okay, so this goat that I'm forced to have as a pet, even though I'm scared of goats, I'll have to get used to that. The earthquakes you didn't tell me about, I'll have to get used to that. Like going on and on and on about all the things that she's just gonna have to get used to. And on top of that, he has this like friend, I don't remember her name either, it's apparently like I suck, and it's like Marie, I think her name is Marie, yeah. He has this friend Marie, and she's like the vet, and she's just like obviously pining for Jonah, constantly like bad-mouthing their relationship, like, oh, you really think that's gonna work? Like, no, it's gonna fail. And like he's not like cutting ties with the relationship, and I have no issues with like guys and girls being friends. Like I have guy friends, Chris has girlfriends, that's fine. But when one of them, like when the girlfriend is like actively trying to get with you, that's like not a vibe. And he's like to Kayla, nah, like everything's fine, when she's clearly uncomfortable with it. And it's like that also annoyed me. So yeah, 3 out of 5. If you read this, I would say sure, give this one a go if you want, but like also I would have been fine with this being the end of the story because I just don't like Jonah. My other 4 is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janette McCurdy. I have a hard time really giving a rating to an autobiography because in my mind, if anybody is brave enough to write a book about their trauma, then who am I to give it a rating? But I went with a 4 because personally I already knew most of the story because I'd watched a YouTube video about like her life years ago. So most of this information was not new to me. So I found it harder to, like I wasn't like glued to the book. So I give it a 4 out of 5. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. I know that Janette got like a bunch of shit for like the title. I'm Glad My Mom Died, but like who isn't glad she died? She was evil. She was terrible. But yeah, it's just basically about her life, obviously, and like her Nickelodeon days, how she really never wanted to be an actress. Her mom kind of forced it onto her, and she lived her life to please her mom. Her mom basically introduced her to anorexia and bulimia. She went through a little bit of like an alcohol problem, all of which her mom was really like on board for, and she's like, oh, we'll calorie restrict together. And she was just a very abusive woman, so like fuck that bitch. But I like the cover personally. So my 2 5 stars, which I like a romance that's not very sexy. I prefer like a Hallmark movie type situation. So the first one is Love in Other Words. This book was suggested to me by Kirsten, and girl was right. So this flip-flops time, like it'll be like a chapter on the then and then go back to the past. The then and now, yeah. About this girl Macy, and she is a pediatric doctor, and she's engaged to this guy who's like in accounting or something to that effect. He's wealthy, stable, he has a daughter from a previous relationship, and they're just like living their life. Granted, they got engaged after 2 months, which is a bit wild, and her friends are like not too keen on the relationship, not because they have any issues with him, but because they got engaged after 2 months, and that's kind of like wild. And they don't really know anything about him. So she is getting lunch with her best friend, and she looks up and sees this guy Elliot, who was her childhood bestie pal. And that's kind of when her world tips upside down, and you learn that when Macy was a young girl, her mom passed away, and before her mom died, she left like all of these rules for her dad to follow. One of them was to like have a getaway that they could go to when Macy just needed a break. So he bought them like a little weekend home, which Yeah, he bought her like a weekend home, and bought them a weekend home, and there's where she met her childhood best friend Elliot, and they built like a library in her closet, and they were both really big into reading. They would have like a what's your word of the day, da 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 da. And over time they kind of like fell in love, and you keep in when you're reading in the now part of the book, it's like alluding that something happened on New Year's Eve and they haven't spoken since. And so when they run into each other, he's like, oh, how's your dad? And she's like, he died. And he's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And she's like, is what it is, I thought you would have heard, but that's fine, whatever. So she agrees to meet him for like lunch or breakfast or something, and they like chit chat or whatever. And this is sort of like reigniting their fire, and she's realizing that her relationship with her fiance isn't like what she thinks it is. And so she and her fiance talk, and basically he's still in love with his ex-wife who is battling addiction and like left him and the kid. And basically they're not in love, they're just together for convenience. So they end up separating, and she and Elliot are getting closer and closer. He broke up with his girlfriend after seeing her one time because the feelings just came right back. And eventually you learn that he had this friend Emma that Macy was always kind of like jealous of, but Macy didn't want them to be in a relationship because she didn't want to lose him as a friend. And then they eventually decide to be in a relationship, and he calls her on New Year's Eve and is like, I love you, I want you to marry me. She's like, boy, you drunk. And then she drives to the weekend house like go see him because, you know, he like just proposed to her over the phone. So she goes and finds him drunk, passed out, naked in bed with Emma. So he cheated on her. So she leaves in a tizzy, crying, goes back to their house. She was supposed to call her dad to check in, and she didn't, so he drove to go find her, but she turned off her phone. Everything was fine, and then on his drive back home, her dad got into a car accident and died. So she essentially like blamed Elliot for all of that, for all of the years, and they talk about it, and they end up living happily ever after. And it's just like a cutie pie book, and I just really, really liked this. And apparently Christina Lauren is actually two friends, Christina and Lauren, who write books together, which I think is really cute. So this was really good. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And the last book I finished, this one is When in Rome by Sarah Adams. This is the one I most recently finished. It is about this girl Amelia, who is a pop star and goes by her stage name Ray Rose. And she's just really burnt out. She's about to be going on a 9-month tour and has all these press interviews to do, and she's just kind of sick of it. She's obsessed with Audrey Hepburn, so she like eeny meeny miny moes on her films, lands on Rome and Holiday, and is like, okay, I need to get out of town just like Audrey did and go to Rome. So she googled in her phone the closest Rome, which was Rome, Kentucky. My battery's about to die, so there's that. So she goes to Rome, Kentucky, and on her way there, her car breaks down. And she breaks down in front of this guy Noah's house. And he comes out and is like, do you need help? And she's like, nah, you're a serial killer. And he's like, no, I really just want to help you. And she's like, no. And eventually she does go in, and he recognizes her and immediately doesn't like her because he thinks she's just some spoiled pop princess, da 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 da. He owns a pie shop that his grandma handed down to him, and he also has this ex-fiance that made him like swear off love. And so she ends up staying at his house for the night, and he brings her into town to get a room at the B&B, and this lady Mabel owns the B&B. If the frame is a little bit different, I apologize, I had to change the battery. So anywho, he brings her to the inn, and Mabel's like, nah, I don't got any room. And Mabel was his grandmother's best friend, and you learn that Noah's mom and dad both passed away when he was young, and his grandma raised him. And like Mabel, his grandma's best friend, was like essentially his other parent. And she's like, nah, I don't got any rooms. And he's like, yes, you do. She's like, nah, booked. He's like, nobody visits this town, you're lying. And she's like, nah, we're booked. And she's like refusing to rent this girl a room so that she has to stay with him because she wants him to open his heart to love again. And so through the book, he like learns that she's not this spoiled princess, and that she's super lonely and she's sad, and like she doesn't ever get to breathe Her relationship with her mother is estranged. She gets like, she accidentally mixes a sleeping pill and alcohol and like gets really drunk and sleepy. And like in that state, she like says to him, she's like, my mom doesn't even like me. She just uses me for my money. I'm just so lonely, just so tired and just so lonely. And this really starts to like soften him a bit to her. And he's like, okay, I have this day off of work. What are things you want to do? And like in it, it's like this running joke that he makes really good pancakes and she wants him to give her his pancake recipe. And he's like, nope, that's secret. So she keeps trying to make pancakes. She keeps making shitty pancakes. They're just having fun together. It's very lighthearted. And he made it clear to her that they were not going to get romantically involved. And she was like, that's fine. Like, I really just want a friend. Like, I don't have anybody. And then through it, in this town, there's no service, no Wi-Fi, nothing. So nobody can get a hold of her unless she uses Noah's house phone. So on occasion, she calls her manager just to inform her she's not alive, or that she is alive, that she's not dead, and that everything's fine. And her manager's being like a freaking crazy person. Then towards the end, Amelia and Noah end up deciding, like, she's just falling in love with the town, his sisters. Noah actually takes her. You think that his grandmother has passed away, but what you find out is that she actually has Alzheimer's and is like in a nursing home or assisted living. He takes her to meet her, and then you can tell they're falling in love, and he's like, we can't, and she's like, I know. He's like, but I just can't stop myself type thing, and like, whatever. They fall in love and it's really cute, but then one day they're like, you know, being cute and romantic, and the paparazzi show up, and it's like 30 of them. Like, everybody was informed this is where she is. Her manager's there, her bodyguard's there, like everybody randomly shows up, and she thinks it's her mom because her mom's the only person she told where she was. And she is trying to put the pieces together, and she calls her mom and is like, did you call them? She's like, no, what do you mean? She's like, did you sell this story to the press? And she's like, I've literally never, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, why don't we talk anymore? She's like, I don't know. Like, I've tried to ask you, like, I've wanted to call you and talk to you about it so many times, but I figure you're famous now and you don't care. And so, come to find out, her manager was basically pitting her and her mom against each other, calling the paparazzi, selling her stories, all to, like, make a buck. So, like, she repairs her relationship with her mom, she falls in love, and then she goes on tour. She's like, well, I still have to go on tour. And he gets a phone, like a cell phone. He didn't have one, just so he could be able to talk to her and stuff. And then, like, he feels like he can't leave town because last time he tried, like, things went terrible, and one of his sisters was very distraught about it. And she's like, you need to go. Like, you can't push her away. So he shows up at her concert, and it's just like a cute little happily ever after. These are the two that I am lending to Andrea, so I'm gonna put those aside to bring to her. And then I do have a little stacky poo of books I'm about to read. My friend Laura picked our book for my next book club. I haven't ordered it yet. I can tell you what it is though, in case you are curious, because I know I will be reading that before this next video. And it is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. But currently, this is the book I am currently reading. It is Tom Felton, The Magic and Mayhem of Growing Up a Wizard, Beyond the Wand. If you can't tell, maybe you can't. I'm very dedicated to the Harry Potter cause. This whole wall over here, it's like, what? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like 15 wands, my Sword of Gryffindor. We dedicated. So I'm about 30% of the way through this. So that's exciting. And then here is my stack currently. I also just found like $160 worth of like Visa gift cards, and I was about to go spend it all on books. But this book I literally bought, I'm not gonna go through what they're about because I don't really know, haven't read them. This book I bought simply because the cover is so cute and pop arty, and it's so funny. Chris and I were at Barnes and Noble, and he was like, I love the cover of this book. I'm like, yeah, I own it because I love the cover of it. So this one is called Funny You Should Ask by Elisa Sussman. So we're gonna read that. I have Happy People Are Annoying by Josh Peck, and I believe this is his like autobiography. And first off, love Josh Peck, love this color, and I just love the title, The Happy People Are Annoying. This is Twisted Love, and it is Twisted Book 1. There are 4 books in this series, so I thought maybe I would start one of these to see how I like it. We have The Roommate. Again, I really like this cover. I like the like neon light. Oh, This is by Anna. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't know how to pronounce that. Huang. Maybe that's right. Maybe that's not. I don't really know. It's by Rosie Dunn. Looks really cute and good. I have We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This one's called The No Show by Beth O'Leary, one of my friends, I believe. This was the book. She said it was really good and she wanted to like reread it immediately. So we have that, and this book I also bought because I just think it is so visually pleasing, and it is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, a novel by Gabrielle Zevin. So that's currently the books that I have to read. Then I will be getting that one for book club, and like I said, I found all these gift cards, so I'm about to just go buy books with them because why not? But that is it, guys. I hope you liked this style of video. Let me know what you think. Have you read any of the books that I read? I want to know like your detailed thoughts about the books that we went over today. That's it, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye.